are staying on top of the TikTok ban, which is now days away. Oral arguments were made before the Supreme Court hours ago in an effort to stop the ban from taking effect. Earlier today, I spoke to a professor with Suffolk University's law school about the case, and here's a portion of that conversation. I'd like to welcome Professor Maurice Dyson from Suffolk University School of Law. Thank you so much for joining us. So this big argument with TikTok and its users that they're making is that banning the app would violate freedom of speech. But TikTok isn't an American entity, and the U.S. government has broken up other businesses in the past. What do you think of this free speech argument?
Well, it's an important one, particularly because there's so much concern now about the fate of democracy and the rise of autocracy across the globe. And so the question of restraining free speech, particularly during these times, is important, not only for democratic purposes, but also for the moment of recognizing the Bill of Rights protection against freedom of speech, incursions against freedom of association. We have a particular right to associate with who we want, and we have a right to petition the government for grievances, and we have the right to exercise our opinion. And TikTok is an enormously powerful platform that has given content creators a voice in a way that other platforms have not.
Could it be that both sides are right? Banning the app could violate freedom of expression, but keeping it could also put at risk our national security. I mean, the justices, it seems like they have a pretty challenging case ahead of them. How would you approach this?
Well, I think there is a middle ground that needs to be had, and I think it's important that it begins with autonomy and respect for the U.S. consumer. More specifically, when we think about this idea that data manipulation, data harvesting, and how influence can happen through the data that we submit, that's a significant concern. And that doesn't just apply to TikTok. We want to be mindful of Meta. We want to be mindful of other companies, Cambridge Analytica, that have used and harvested data and have orchestrated political campaigns like, the exit from the European Union with Brexit. We've seen political manipulation with data manipulation and data extraction. So that is a serious concern. But that doesn't just apply to TikTok, and Meta and other companies need to be looked at very seriously.
All right, with any ruling here, there's precedent set. And you kind of alluded to it with other social media companies. Are there any concerns that if the Supreme Court does agree that the ban is necessary, that precedents could be set that will impact freedom of speech in other ways?
Well, I think it's interesting now that Meta, for instance, has announced that it's now abandoning after 8 years its fact-checking policy. And so the stated concern was that we were overstepping, and maybe in a sense with the TikTok case, we don't want to regulate speech based on content. Time, place, and manner restrictions are fine, but restricting and regulating speech based upon the content is not permitted under the First Amendment. So to the extent that fact-checking may regulate speech based on content can impinge upon some First Amendment concerns. But the truth of the matter is that misinformation, disinformation does not serve democracy either. It has a low information value in terms of the marketplace of ideas that the First Amendment is supposed to protect. So if we're not actually protecting the free marketplace of ideas where there's informed information, where there's accurate information, then you are just encouraging misinformation, disinformation, and potentially harmful algorithmic operations that are targeting the most vulnerable in our society who do not have political access, economic access, and certainly have more vulnerable voices in a democracy that is in peril as it is now.
Well, we will see what happens, what the Supreme Court says here. I know we're all going to be paying very close attention to the decision here. Professor Maurice Dyson from Suffolk University School of Law, thanks so much for your time.